Since their introduction over 30 years ago, the mainline Final Fantasy games have featured a diverse cast of characters, settings, and stories, each unique to their respective numbered game. And while the entries share many similarities through castable spells and consumable items, few mainstays are as iconic as Final Fantasy's summons. Although it's hard to imagine a Final Fantasy game without Shiva or Ifrit, they didn't actually appear until the series' third entry, and were nothing more than simple pixelated aids in battle to start. Fast forward more than 30 years, and summons, or Eikons as they're known in the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI, have seen increasing importance over the franchise's lifespan. And with these Eikons set to be larger-than-life deities that quite literally hold the fate of the world in their hands, we thought it's time to dive into the rich history of Final Fantasy to explore how summons have evolved throughout the years. Although you may think summons have been around since the very beginning, summonable creatures didn't actually show up until Final Fantasy III, released in Japan for the Famicom. But from that point on, summons would appear in every successive mainline entry and become a staple of the series. Final Fantasy III, not to be confused with the US version of Final Fantasy III on SNES, which is actually Final Fantasy VI, but don't worry, we won't get too hung up on numbers here, introduced the job system, and alongside it, the summoner class. Well, technically 3 summoning classes: Evoker, Sage, and Summoner, each possessing the ability to call upon more powerful help in battle. Final Fantasy III originally introduced 8 summons: Chocobo, a large mountable yellow bird that might as well now be the franchise's unofficial mascot; Shiva, the blue ice goddess able to freeze just about anything or anyone; Ramuh, who often appears as an old man carrying a staff imbued with the power of lightning; Ifrit, a massive horned demon hailing from the fiery depths of hell; Titan, a giant elemental possessing the power of earth who often takes on many different appearances; Odin, a spectral knight depicted riding an armored horse who is known for slicing his foes into pieces; Leviathan, a giant sea serpent that can call upon large tidal waves to devastate its foes; and Bahamut, who, interestingly enough, was actually a quest-giving NPC in the original Final Fantasy for NES, sometimes referred to as the Dragon King, and often considered the strongest of all the summons, is known for unleashing its signature attack Mega Flare to obliterate anyone who opposes it on the battlefield. All 8 summons could be purchased from specific magic shops throughout the world, similar to spells, but Odin, Leviathan, and Bahamut could also be acquired by defeating each one in battle, a concept that would be revised in later games. And in fact, these original 8 summons have appeared in many subsequent titles, with Shiva, Ifrit, and Bahamut in almost every mainline release. In Final Fantasy IV, or Final Fantasy II in the US, okay, sorry, we did get a little bit hung up on the numbers, Rydia, one of 12 party members, was the only playable character who possessed the ability to call on summons in battle, a first for the series and a departure from the job-based systems of the previous title. Additionally, a backstory was given to the party's only summoner that fleshed out her ancestors' past, while also introducing a basic rule that stated that those with the ability to summon creatures were able to do so only after defeating said creature in battle, thus forging a bond and earning its trust. Final Fantasy IV added 6 new summons to the original 8, bringing the total to 14. Final Fantasy V brought back the job system introduced in Final Fantasy III, along with the Summoner class who, as in the previous iteration, had the ability to summon one of 16 available creatures to aid in battle. Final Fantasy V separated summons into 5 levels depending on their overall power. Level 1 summons could be purchased from shops, while the higher level summons had to be defeated in battle. The final mainline 2D entry in the series shook up summons in a big way by nearly doubling the available roster. Final Fantasy VI featured 27 espers in total, 31 in the Game Boy Advance port, and added a new layer to how the party could utilize their abilities. After espers were defeated in battle, their remains would become a piece of magicite that could be equipped by any party member, allowing them to be summoned in battle to aid the team. However, each Esper could only be summoned once per battle, making the timing and use more critical. They also factored into the story, as the antagonistic Gestalian Empire sought to exploit the Espers for their abilities in an effort to dominate the world through the use of their Magitech weapons. Final Fantasy VII brought the series into the third dimension, with full 3D characters and environments, but still evoked the series' past. Similar to the system used in Final Fantasy V, summons had to be equipped to party members, this time through the materia system. Each summon materia contained one of 16 summons and could be leveled up to allow for more uses during battle. Players could also acquire the Master Summon materia, which allowed its user to access all 16 summonable monsters in battle with no limit on how many times it could be used. Summons also got a substantial visual overhaul with unique cutscenes played during combat. For the first time ever, players saw Shiva's Diamond Dust ability in all its glory as it froze and shattered enemies, as well as Ifrit bursting up from beneath the surface to unleash its signature Hellfire ability. With the new cinematics, summons finally felt larger than life. Final Fantasy VII also introduced two new Bahamut variants that could be summoned. Neo Bahamut, featuring a deep red colour scheme and larger wings, and Bahamut Zero, the strongest of the three, who unleashed the devastating ability Terra Flare. Final Fantasy VIII refined summoning even further with the often polarizing junctioning system, which allowed players to link magic spells and guardian forces, or GFs for short, which is 8's name for summons, to specific character stats, resulting in boosts to overall health, attack damage, and more. For the first time in the series, Guardian Forces could gain experience in battle alongside your party to level up and unlock new permanent upgrades, ranging from simple stat boosts for the junctioned party member to powerful new spells and abilities that could be used in and out of combat. Guardian Forces featured more epic FMV cutscenes, many of which pulled the battlefield into an alternate dimension during the attack. Eden, the most powerful Guardian Force, includes a cutscene that's nearly 2 minutes long each time it's summoned. Apparently, the ultimate power is actually patience. In total, Final Fantasy VIII featured 23 Guardian Forces, 16 of which could be junctioned to party members and could be acquired by stealing them from enemies in combat with the Draw ability or by defeating them in battle. While Final Fantasy VIII definitely reimagined the summoning system in a major way, Final Fantasy IX reined it in, with Eidolons taking a backseat alongside the more traditional battle system. Only 2 characters had access to Eidolons in battle, Garnet and Eiko, and instead of besting the Eidolons in combat to acquire them, they instead came from equipped gemstones that had to be leveled up before the monster could be summoned. Eidolons also featured both short and long summoning sequences that would randomly occur, ensuring you weren't forced to sit through minute-long cutscenes each time. A nice quality of life improvement for the turn-based battles. Final Fantasy X brought players to the massive world of Spira, and introduced them to the summons known as Aeons. These unique summons played a more central role to the story, as only summoners had the ability to defeat Sin, the game's main antagonist. Players visited temples across the world to gain the power of each Aeon on their journey to eventually reach the city of Zanarkand and obtain the final Aeon. Yuna, the summoner who was part of your party, was the only playable character able to call upon Aeons in battle. Final Fantasy X was also the first entry to make summons temporary party members as they fought alongside Yuna when invoked. Each Aeon could learn new abilities through the use of certain items. While there weren't many Aeons available, 8 in total, 3 of which were optional, the bigger emphasis on their story importance laid the groundwork for how summons would be handled in future titles. Final Fantasy XI's MMO structure varied greatly from the previous 10 entries, but summons were not overly unfamiliar. Players could choose their job and level it up to learn powerful new abilities. Those who picked Summoner had access to avatars, the summonable monsters of this iteration, which were divided into 2 distinct categories, terrestrial avatars and celestial avatars. Summoners started with the ability to call upon simple elementals, as well as the terrestrial avatar Carbuncle. To obtain the remaining 12 avatars, players had to seek them out in the world and defeat them in battle. Avatars remained by the summoner's side during combat, attacking enemies until dismissed. Final Fantasy XII bucked many series trends by reinventing its classic turn-based battles and rethinking the summoning system. This time around, the 13 available summons are referred to as espers, and each one is aligned with a specific sign of the Final Fantasy zodiac, which accounts for the traditional 12 astrological signs plus Ophiuchus. Final Fantasy XII also marks the first time in the series since summons were introduced that neither Shiva, Ifrit, or Bahamut appear, although they are referenced as names of different airships.
Captain Azulus, take them to Shiva.
Each of the 13 espers are based on previous characters or enemies in the Final Fantasy franchise, including Chaos from Final Fantasy I and Zeramus from Final Fantasy IV. Once defeated in combat, espers can be permanently linked to a singular party member, granting them specific abilities. 5 espers are obtained as part of the story, with the remaining 8 available through side quests. When summoned in battle, they can be controlled individually to fight alongside their summoner before releasing a large attack upon death. In Final Fantasy XIII, summons were once again reimagined, albeit reusing the Eidolon moniker from Final Fantasy IX. This time, the Eidolons were mechanical beings that could change between 2 different forms during combat, and would only appear when one of the 6 party members was in need of help during a key moment in their story. Once the Eidolons have manifested, that specific party member must beat it in battle to form a bond. When summoned in battle, Eidolons would fight alongside the summoner and utilize specific abilities. Each summoner could build up a gauge by performing specific actions that, when filled, allowed the Eidolon to enter Gestalt mode, transforming into a vehicle of sorts, ranging from a mechanized horse to a car to a turret-equipped mech, depending on the Eidolon. In Gestalt mode, the battle shifted to a more action-oriented sequence involving various button commands to perform different attacks that could be used until the timer ran out.
Way to go!
Final Fantasy XIV is the second mainline MMO in the franchise, and evolves the summoner class quite a bit from its iteration in Final Fantasy XI. Primals, as they are known in Final Fantasy XIV, play a major role in the overall narrative told across its base game and multiple expansions. The various primals located across Eorzea are worshipped by individual races as deities, for better or worse. More often than not, players gather a team and fight through dungeon or raid-like instances with the goal of defeating one of these primals to put an end to the evil plans concocted by its worshippers. The summoner job is unlocked by obtaining a prerequisite soul crystal as an Arcanist, one of the many starting classes. While initially only having the option to summon Carbuncle, summoners gain the ability to summon smaller versions of the primals, called Eggy, by leveling up. In battle, these Eggy primals function similarly to spells with a cooldown, often dealing moderate to substantial damage to nearby enemies before departing. While nowhere near the size and power of the original primal, these pint-sized powerhouses can still pack a punch in the right hands. In Final Fantasy XV, 6 godlike creatures exist known as astrals. They are Titan, god of earth; Ramu, god of the storm; Leviathan, goddess of the seas; Shiva, goddess of ice; Bahamut, god of war; and Ifrit, god of fire. Not much is known about the 6 astrals, but they are believed to exist only to protect the world of Eos, in which Final Fantasy XV takes place. Because of this, the astrals are worshipped by everyone on Eos as true gods. Noctis, Final Fantasy XV's main protagonist, must undergo a series of trials set forth by the astrals to forge a bond with one. Only then will he gain the ability to call upon them in battle. However, astrals don't function like summons in previous titles. Instead, Noctis will randomly have the option to summon them based on the type of terrain he is fighting on, and if he is facing any immediate danger. This marks the first time that the summons don't bend to the will of their summoner, further emphasizing their incredible power as the gods of Eos. Final Fantasy XVI appears to be shaking up summons more than ever before with the Eikons. While there's plenty of mystery to these Eikons, we know they are the most powerful beings in the world of Valisthea, and are intrinsically linked to special people known as dominants. These individuals host the Eikons inside of them and can seemingly summon them into the world to fight on their behalf. However, it appears these dominants are all in political or cultural positions of power, and with a full-scale war brewing between the various nations seen in the most recent trailer, we got a glimpse of the mighty kaiju-esque Eikons fighting one another. The official logo for Final Fantasy XVI even depicts the icons of Fire Phoenix and Ifrit locked in combat. So far, we've seen many classic summons represented as icons, including Shiva, Titan, Ramu, Garuda, Bahamut, Odin, and the aforementioned Phoenix and Ifrit. But we likely won't learn the full extent of their importance to Final Fantasy XVI until we experience the story ourselves. It's clear that Final Fantasy has always placed an emphasis on its summonable monsters since they were introduced over 30 years ago, with over 200 summonable creatures featured across the 16 mainline titles.
Choose your Aeon well, Summoner.
Throughout the years, we've seen them evolve from small, pixelated creatures into the towering monsters featured in the most recent trailers for Final Fantasy XVI. Summons only seem to be growing more integral to the main stories, and we're excited to see how they continue to evolve in future games. And of course, to see how much cooler their attacks become with each new appearance. For more Final Fantasy, check out why Final Fantasy is the biggest RPG of all time, as well as the most recent trailers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy XVI. For everything else, keep it locked to IGN.
So you like IGN, huh? The news, the videos, the guides, and wikis, it's all in your wheelhouse. But do you ever wish there was more? Introducing IGN Plus, a brand new program that's loaded with tons of cool perks and benefits. Sign up for IGN Plus today and you'll unlock free games and in-game content every month, a free subscription to Map Genie Plus, huge discounts for stuff like Dream Gear, Power A, Humble Bundle, the IGN Store, and tons more. IGN Plus is just $29.99 a year for a limited time. You deserve a little extra.